Hey folks, Matt Easton here, Scholar Gladiatoria and Eastern Antique Arms. And I want to have a small political rant here. So at the moment in the UK, we obviously have certain COVID or coronavirus restrictions and regulations, which is only right. It is a pandemic that we're all having to deal with in various different ways. And I do respect certainly other people's health and my own, that of my family, that of my loved ones, my friends, even people I don't know. But what we're currently dealing with in the UK are a government who are so inept that they keep changing regulations backwards and forwards, and I don't have a problem with that per se. What I have a problem with is they seem completely incapable of making coherent policy and making it clear and easy to follow. And this is one of the fundamental problems. And they keep bringing out new and adjusted legislation and blaming us. I listened to Boris Johnson's speeches, what he says in Prime Minister's Question Time and other interviews. And it's quite clear that Boris has been brought up with the mindset of blaming other people. Nothing is ever his fault. Nothing is ever his government's fault. It's the people's fault. It is our fault that coronavirus is a thing. It is our fault. Anything that is basically a result of their ineptitude and their bad decision making, it's our fault. It's never their fault. They never admit any guilt. I worked for the government for close to 20 years actually, first as a temp and then as a permanent civil servant for around 15 years. So I've worked with government ministers, I've worked with secretaries of state, and I have met and interacted with lots of high-ranking government officials, and I have worked under several different governments, both parties, and a coalition government as well, in fact. And the fact is that the current government's kind of tendency towards blaming everyone else, but also, as I say, not producing coherent strategies is a problem. Now, I'm not going to talk about coronavirus anymore. What I'm going to talk about is weapon legislation, and I'm not going to talk about it for very long, but I just want you to consider what we're currently living through is a thing which affects billions of people in the world, and just within the UK, millions, tens of millions of people's eyes are on this issue and are working on this thing. There's obviously people working in the health sector, but all other sorts of sectors, schooling and all sorts of other things that are having to deal with this issue at the moment. And we have a government which isn't able to produce, even under these kind of very scrutinised and very publicly visible, massive issue, they're not able to produce coherent and consistent guidance. Now imagine, so that's a topic which millions, tens of millions of people on a daily basis are tuning into the news to find out the latest on. And they can't even produce coherent guidance and regulations and laws on that. Now imagine something like weapons regulations, okay? Something that affects maybe people who use knives or collect knives, people who deal with antique weapons like me, antique weapons dealers, who are dealing with part of this nation and the world's heritage, okay? Things like this sword which was carried in the Napoleonic Wars 200 years ago, but also people who shoot, people who hunt or shoot for sport, or people target sports, all sorts of things, even airsoft, okay? Even airsoft and paintballing is affected by these crazy laws that we have to live under. And we've ended up with these ludicrous, and I've talked about this in previous videos, these ludicrous laws that we have in the UK, both that affect firearms, but also that affect edged weapons, and in fact even affect things like sticks or martial arts training weapons, that are incoherent and inconsistent. They make no sense, to the point where this it's an antique, in fact, so this actually has certain defences under UK law, but they decided some years ago as a knee-jerk reaction to bring in the so-called samurai sword ban, which affects only curved swords, only with a single edge, only over 50 centimetres. And this has caused me no end of pain in the proverbial when I'm importing and exporting, and for all the other people as well who use blunt fencing weapons, or reenactors who are recreating historical events from Britain's history. We have to live under these ridiculous, nonsensical and so ill thought out laws. partly because we have governments, and not just this government, but successive governments, some of which I've worked under, who are incapable of listening to experts and listening to a cross-section of society and actually responding to what they're told. They just plough through with their knee-jerk reactions without thinking of the full ramifications of these things. And, you know, I don't know, sometimes I reach the end of my tether with this, and we're constantly having to change. I have had to change how I pack and label and ship things, how I import things, how I sell things, all the time, just within the last 10 years, because of stupid government policies which are purely pandering to tabloid headlines and don't achieve any of the goals that they set out to. Has knife crime been reduced as a result of any of these policies? No. Has firearms crimes been reduced as the result of any of these policies? No. Okay, those of us who are hobbyists, who are law-abiding citizens that, you know, collect antique swords or shoot firearms, we're the only ones who suffer from this. Ultimately, the government, it doesn't really even benefit from it either, apart from satisfying their critics and responding to newspaper headlines. But the victims of crime are never assisted by these ridiculous laws. It's only the people who obey the laws who are affected by them. So there we go. I just want to conclude by saying, just imagine, you just watch the UK government at the moment and see how terribly they are handling their policy and their regulations and how they communicate this to the public, how terribly they're handling that when tens of millions of people are watching this issue. And now imagine something as fringe interest as antique swords or shooting is affected by this type of ludicrous policy making. And, you know, there needs to be a recourse. There needs to be a way for citizens, for members of the population to push back and roll back laws. And this is something which I might be looking at in the future. I might be looking at lobbying. I might be looking at maybe starting campaigns, because there are many weapons regulations at the moment that affect us, which are completely contradictory, nonsensical, and I strongly believe that if a law is brought in to achieve a goal and it's demonstrable that after an amount of time it has not achieved that goal, it should be rolled back. If there is no evidence that the laws that have been brought in to reduce knife crime have reduced knife crime, then that law should be taken away, should be rolled back to where it was prior to that law being brought in. There's no point having a law if it doesn't achieve anything, if it only causes problems for law-abiding citizens. Anyway, thank you for listening to my rant. Feel free to post your comments below. I'd be very interested to read some of those, and I will see you again soon on Scholar Gladiatori channel with a hopefully less contentious, less annoying, less aggravated issue, and we'll return to the peaceful, serene subject of antique weapons. Cheers, folks.